Kyle Shanahan is called out by several ex-players. An update on Brock Purdy. We're going to get into all the 49ers news from the weekend next on Inside the 49ers with Jack Hammer. Hey, it's Monday morning. It is time to get into the 49ers news from the weekend. Want to just shout out a couple of folks already in the comment section this morning. We have Lucas Pesci. Good to have you on board, Lucas. And we also have Jesus M. Niner Gang, here we go. Let's get into the news of the weekend. A little bit going on with the 49ers. We'll be probably about 10, 15 minutes tops here, just to get you guys through, get you ready for the week ahead. We look back at this week, and Saturday was a rough day for Kyle Shanahan. It started out with a new video dropping from JT O'Sullivan, the former NFL quarterback. Worked a little bit with Shanahan at one point in his career. He went through the 49ers injuries at the quarterback position during the 2022 season, and definitely had some words for Kyle Shanahan, calling him out. You know, it was interesting to watch the way that O'Sullivan described the quarterback injuries. Really, I'm focusing on the first three, the injuries to Trey Lance, Jimmy Garoppolo, and then the big one in the NFC Championship game that cost the 49ers a chance at the Super Bowl, the injury to Brock Purdy. And you go back through those and you start to look at the information that JT O'Sullivan was pointing out. I'll say this. I think of the three, and he mentioned this as well. The first one, the injury to Trey Lance, I think, is the least to blame when it comes to the head coach. I watched that, and when I looked at what O'Sullivan was talking about with regards to that run play, if you haven't seen the video, I suggest you go check it out over at the QB school. JT O'Sullivan put that out over the weekend, and he's talking about the need for the right guard to help double team down on one of the defenders. On the defensive line, he's on a little bit of an inside shade on Mike McGlinchey, and he needs to help out there before getting upfield to the linebacker. And from a really high level, when you talk about the reasoning behind the design of the play, when you watch it, at least when I do, it's easy to understand why you have that defense, why you have Spencer Burford just stepping down directly to the linebacker instead of going to the defensive end tackle and then going to the linebacker. And the reason is you want that defensive tackle, to step down, because by him stepping down, that creates the lane for the quarterback to get around. That stepping down, that defensive tackle, if the guard doesn't step down, the defensive guard tackle is going to come straight. And by coming straight, now you're forcing the quarterback to have to loop around more in a normal situation. And I look at that play, and from a play design and a play, the way that it was set up, I think that play was set up beautifully. That's just an example of Mike McGlinchey struggling on those quick down blocks. And that's something that it's not new for McGlinchey. We saw him struggle with that in 2021 out in Arizona with J.J. Watt. Watt's a high-level player, but we've seen him struggle at times with that kind of a block, and it's something that he needs to be better at. From a play design standpoint, I don't think that Shanahan was wrong on the one with the injury to Trey Lance. The Lance injury was just there's a whole lot of things that happened there. It was, you have the guy coming down, which is what causes the pile up because McGlinchey doesn't make the block. And it's just really bad luck there. And I feel like it's kind of the same thing on the second one as well. The Jimmy Garoppolo injury. You know, I felt like the 49ers offensive line on that play blocked it up exactly how it was designed. And I do think that O'Sullivan made a good point and that Garoppolo doesn't have anywhere to go with the ball. I think that's a situation where the player in particular Deebo Samuel, who was a high-level player with the 49ers, one of their best receivers, needs to do a better job of getting into the route. And, it's just a set of unfortunate circumstances that led to it. Garoppolo, if he just throws the ball at the feet of Deebo Samuel, if he just gets the ball up and over and throws it into the ground, he's not injured. A lot of things like that go into it. I just feel like that one, again, it was, if you look at and I think O'Sullivan did a good job of kind of explaining as he went through, again, how one leads to another, but also how the first one is probably the least worst, then the second one is in the middle, and then the last one with Brock Purdy in the NFC Championship game is the worst. And I found that's something that I've been saying since the NFC Championship game, that the blocking to leave Tyler Kroft one-on-one and ask him on a slow developing drop back or play action pass to block one-on-one with Hassan Reddick, who was the second best pass rusher in the NFL, one of the more explosive pass rushers in the NFL in 2022, to leave him one-on-one with a tight end was a mistake. And I felt like O'Sullivan did a good job of explaining that. And O'Sullivan also did a good job of showing some different things that could have taken place in terms of blocking responsibilities. You look at the end of the Super Bowl, and you look at what Andy Reid did in the Super Bowl, and he did exactly what O'Sullivan talked about, which was having more of a five-man protection, drop back type of pass. And that's why it worked out so well for the 49 or for Kansas City, where it didn't work out well for the 49ers. Just a better job of protecting the quarterback by Kansas City overall. Let's see. So that's Kyle Shanahan. And here's the thing. It wasn't just Kyle Shanahan. It wasn't just JT O'Sullivan. It was also goes back to the Super Bowl in 2019. And that was the other one that came out, was late Saturday. Raheem Mostert talking about, hey, how about we just ran the ball in the last 6 minutes, by 2 scores in the Super Bowl? Again, this is something that I talked about back then. Kyle Shanahan, he's lost 2 Super Bowls because he's gotten away from the running game. And there are people who are going to want to carry his water. They're going to excuse Kyle Shanahan for pretty much any mistake that he makes. And that's okay. I understand. I'll say this. Did he screw up in the Super Bowl? Yes. Raheem Mostert didn't touch the ball in the first quarter. Deebo Samuel didn't run the ball in the fourth quarter. So you got 2 of your best playmakers. Raheem Mostert, who came into the Super Bowl off of a record-breaking day against the Green Bay Packers. You have Deebo Samuel, who had been running the ball well in the Super Bowl and has shown to be a playmaker. Neither one of those guys touches the ball in the fourth quarter, or in the first quarter or the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl, when it really matters. And the most egregious of that, there was a 2nd and 4. They had run the ball for 5 yards on first down. I think it's 2nd and 5, and they go with a pass. And I understand that Jimmy Garoppolo might have changed that play at the line of scrimmage. There are certain points in which I think you take the ball, or you take those decisions out of the quarterback's hands, and you say, this is what we're doing. I don't care what the defense shows. We are going to run the ball. If you need to check to a different run, but we're going to run the ball here. We want to bleed the clock, and we're better. Say what you want, but here's the thing. Tyrann Mathieu, after the game, the safety for the Kansas City Chiefs, thanked the 49ers and said that they were happy that the 49ers stopped running the ball and that they turned to the pass. And then in terms of this pass that we keep giving Kyle Shanahan, I'll just say this. Bill Walsh had the greatest quarterback of all time on his roster from 1981 to 1988. He lost multiple times in the postseason. His owner, Eddie DeBartolo, fired him. They actually fired him at one point. I believe it was after the 87 season. They had to have a conversation to have him come back. This is all documented by Carmen Policy. So this pass that everybody keeps giving Kyle Shanahan, a guy who's never won anything in the NFL in terms of the actual Super Bowl, although he's been there a couple of times and he's lost a couple of championship games, I don't get it. No. I think Kyle Shanahan's a terrific coach. that doesn't mean that he's not above reproach. And you look at what Kyle Shanahan, he's done a terrific job. Is he with his faults? Yeah, he has some. And I think it's okay to point those out. And like I said, you don't want him to be fired, but it's clear that you could have criticism of Kyle Shanahan for the way that he calls games and the way that he does some of those things. So wanted to talk about that a little bit this morning. Now, on to some better news. We had some Brock Purdy news came out this week. Brock Purdy did an interview with the radio station out in Arizona on the Rock and Minute show, 9:10 a.m. in Phoenix. That came up late Thursday, early Friday. I don't know exactly which day it was, but I was notified of the interview on Friday, and so I got my hands on it and was listening to that a little bit. And you look through that, and he's talking a little bit about all the different things, the steps that he's on. Talked about the surgery, the process that went through that. It sounds like it was pretty standard there. Talked about that arm brace that he has, and if you've seen that arm brace, it's this huge thing. Starts with a 90-degree angle, and it kind of they gradually move it out. And that's really mostly there to help keep him safe, allow him to move around without that arm moving and injuring it that way. He was talked about if there was any frustration of having to leave the NFC Championship game, and as he's, what is he focusing on there? And Purdy definitely, he acknowledged the frustration of having to leave the NFC Championship game, not being able to play the way that he wanted to. The frustration of that whole day, but also quickly talked about getting back and the focus of getting back to the NFC Championship game and Super Bowl here in 2023. So some good things around Brock Purdy there. The other thing that was interesting is that he got into where he can improve in 2023. And I think this is one of those interesting pieces is Brock Purdy, you hear the debates, Brock Purdy, Trey Lance, and everybody, a lot of people that I keep hearing keeps talking about how Trey Lance has the sky's the limit for Trey Lance, and how Brock Purdy, he's already pretty much maximized his potential. And I don't see that. I don't think that's true. I think Brock Purdy played 8 games, 7, played at an extremely high level for 7 games, and there are some things he can get better at. They talked to him a little bit about what is he doing, getting himself? Is he already getting himself ready for training camp? And he said, yeah, that he's took a couple of weeks off after the season, but he's already been watching film. He's been grinding away there, trying to get back to the basics of the playbook, his reads. And in particular, he talked about his footwork, and Brock Purdy was asked, what were some of the pros that he can carry forward? What were some of the cons? He started out with the cons and talked about it already, footwork, being on time, getting the ball out on time, getting it out on rhythm, getting used to working with Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel and all these receivers that they have, getting the timing down better there. You look at it and you got to remember, Brock Purdy didn't work with those guys during training camp other than a couple of throws here and there during the one-on-one periods or something like that when they were doing or when it was just quarterbacks and receivers throwing. He really didn't work with them all that much. He worked with them a little bit, but not as much as you would expect. And then once the season started, he didn't run with the ones really at all, because once the season starts, the starting quarterback is the one who's getting those reps. And, it wasn't until the Miami game that he really got to work with those guys all the time. And I can say this, that during practices, they made sure that Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and Juwan Jennings and George Kittle were getting all the throws from Brock Purdy during the quarterback warm-up periods and all those kind of things. So there's definitely room for Brock Purdy to grow. He isn't at the max of his potential yet. He still has room to grow. He's going to continue to grow. It's all about how he comes back from this UCL surgery. And I'm not a doctor, but I'll tell you what the doctors have said. The doctors that we've heard talk about this, there's been a different depending on what YouTube channel you're watching, there's been different doctors on to discuss it. All of them have said the same thing, that his arm could actually come back stronger as a result of this due to the focus on the rehab. So we'll see how that goes forward with Brock Purdy. As far as the pros coming off of last year, the leadership that he showed, he mentioned, stepping out there, leading the team, I think that was pretty well. on display for everybody watching the 49ers over the second half of the year. And you can just see it. You can see it on the film. And I think if you take that and you continue to build things are you take those positives of that leadership that Brock Purdy showed, you take the negatives and his ability to now address those. Can he get on time? Can he get on rhythm more with his receivers? And if he can do that, you need to watch out. And the last but not least was he was asked about the comments made by both Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch about being the leader in the clubhouse, and asked if he felt any extra pressure behind that. And his response was no, that for him, it's just getting healthy. And then once you get healthy, get out there, compete with your teammates, and then doing whatever it takes to win. And I think that's the right approach as well. You just go out, you do the best you can, you deal with the situations that they come. You can't get too far ahead. And that's one of the biggest things about that we saw with Brock Purdy. We saw with Jimmy Garoppolo at times too. You can't play the game. You can't play next week's game until you get there. You got to stay focused in the moment. And that's the big thing that I think Brock Purdy did a really nice job of during the season last year, was staying in the moment, making the play when they were there. And we'll see how he grows from here. Like I said, I don't think that he's done just yet. Now, some other things. It was April Fool's Day on Saturday, which meant 4-1, which for 4-1, if you're a 49ers player, 49ers cap guru, 4-1 was a big day. There were several players who had contract money and contract guarantees go into effect on 4-1. The biggest of those was Trent Williams, who had a opt-in situation where either Trent Williams, 49ers had to opt in to the final 3 years of his contract, that contract that he signed a couple of years ago. That was picked up. And so the option is picked up as part of that $10 million gets fully guaranteed. And Trent Williams is now locked in to the 49ers through 2026. You start to look at this, and Williams is at the end of the contract is going to be, I think, 38 at the time of the contract comes up. He might not make it to the end. I do think that there's a possibility, now that this is in place, for the 49ers to do some restructuring with Trent Williams to lower his cap number either this year or next year. There was a question even whether or not Trent Williams was going to return to the 49ers in 2023. That was a question at the end of the season. He ended up coming back. If he decides to retire next year, if he makes 2023 his last year, the 49ers would save a good amount of money against their salary cap in 2024 as a result of a retirement. Now, that would also carry a severe dead cap hit in 2025. That's something that the 49ers kind of work around. So keep an eye on Trent Williams, keep an eye on Trent Williams' contract, but he has now opted into the 49ers from 2024 to 2026. It's a $10 million option. This is something that I first started talking about and bringing out back in October. Follow me on Twitter. There was a tweet that I put out right around the middle of October about this. It was something to keep an eye on, but that happened over the weekend there as well. Deebo Samuel made some money over the weekend. He had $16.417 million of his 2024 salary become fully guaranteed. Samuel's coming off of, I think, a little bit of a down year. He had a career season in 2021, got a big contract. He struggled last year after the holdout to start training camp. I felt like the 49ers didn't use him the same way as they did the year before. A lot fewer, big number of passes down the field, no longer there. They used him primarily in an underneath role. And that just made it a little bit harder for him to really get going and show the yards after catch. A few times where they did get him the ball down the field a little bit further, like the Monday night game at home against the Rams and so on, you saw that play from Deebo Samuel. The 49ers really focus on how they're going to attack the field with Deebo Samuel next season. I think that's something to keep an eye on. Linebacker Dre Greenlaw, $3 million in guarantees took place on 4-1. So the number 2 linebacker, the 49ers, has been an excellent second linebacker to Fred Warner. He had $3 million guaranteed on 4-1. So that's a good move for the 49ers second linebacker there. Same thing with wide receiver Ray McLeod, the punt returner, kick returner. He had his salary for 2023 become fully guaranteed. That's $1.08 million in guarantees for Ray McLeod. Again, this is a guy who really helped the 49ers out in the return game. There was definitely an escalation there for Ray McLeod. Even helped them out in the run game, that big touchdown run against the Washington Commanders, for example, when he was in replacing Deebo Samuel. Just a really nice player entering the final year of his contract with the 49ers. Something to keep an eye on how he performs contract year-wise there. And then last but not least, Mitchell Wishnowsky, the 49ers punter. He had $1 million guaranteed for his 2023 salary. So the 49ers punter get some money as well. Wishnowsky did a good job throughout the season last year on the punt side. It'd be nice if he was able to help the 49ers off on the kickoffs, but we'll see what happens. I think the 49ers, they went out, made a move, brought in a kicker. Look for the 49ers to make another addition on the kicking side in the draft, I think. Really quick, just wanted to say thanks to everybody for taking the time, Detroit, to tune in. Going back to Brock Purdy, Red Eye here says, 2 passes Brock can't do, long passes 70 yards downfield and short 15-yard bullet passes and really tight coverage, all due to lack of arm strength. Is it necessary? Nope, but nice to have. And I agree with you there, Red Eye. That's exactly it. It's nice to have that ability to launch the ball 70 yards downfield. But in reality, the number of times you use that is relatively slim. You start to go back and you look at the number of throws that guys have over 30 yards downfield. The number of throws by quarterbacks plus 30 isn't really statistically it's measurable, but it's not dramatic. And so that's why when you look at the different services, they all talk about 20 plus because majority of those downfield throws are in the 20 to 35 yard range. You really don't get those super long throws. You just don't have time to get it. The only time that something like that usually happens is when a play totally breaks down and the quarterback's running around, then they plant their feet and launch it. Something like a John Elway type of throw. Or sometimes we've seen a guy like Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen do those throws as well. So not a big deal there. But I think it's going to be interesting to watch how the 49ers move forward with Brock Purdy, Trey Lance. Trey Lance has a shot here. Remember, Trey Lance has the run of the organization along with Sam Darnold. This 49ers quarterback situation is going to be something to talk about. We'll probably get into that later on today. But I wanted to come in and just kind of at a high level, let you guys know what took place over the weekend. This is your Inside the 49ers morning minutia with Jack Hammer. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. If you guys can do me a favor, hit that like button. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button on your way out and hit the little bell notification so you don't miss any of the content as it comes up, because we're going to make sure that we bring you all the breaking news, rumors, and updates on the 49ers this offseason as they happen right here on Inside the 49ers with Jack Hammer. Thank you all so much. I appreciate your time. Have a great rest of your day. And we'll be talking with you soon.